Hello, everybody. Good morning if you are in the United States. Welcome to the first day of a 3-day symposium series named the Next Generation Scientists. This event is organized by the Training Advisory Committee of the American Physiological Society with the support of InsideScientific. My name is Miguel Zárate, and along with my partner, Dr. Gosia Caxton, will be moderating the entire session. One of the main roles of the Training Advisory Committee is to investigate the needs of trainees to determine how the society can provide necessary support and tools to guide them through their respective careers. This can be done through a series of activities, workshops, or events such as this symposium. During these 3 days, we will discuss about what it takes to become successful in the academic and non-academic world, particularly this globalized world in this current situation that constantly changes and requires quick adaptation. The symposium has been designed to target 3 important aspects of your careers: communication, identity, and engagement and outreach. The topic of this first day is communication, skills for small and large audiences. And without further ado, I will introduce to our both speakers. First of all, we will have Dr. Christopher Banek. He is an assistant professor from the University of Arizona College of Medicine. And he will be followed by Dr. Kelly Hyndman, an assistant professor for the University of Alabama and Birmingham. Without further ado, we're going to start the presentation with Dr. Chris Banek. He's going to talk about tips for talking to small audiences.
All right. Thank you, Miguel, for that introduction, and thank you all for joining us this morning. It's bright and early here in Tucson. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free, like Miguel mentioned, to submit those into the chat box, or you can contact me directly via Twitter or email. My contact information is actually embedded in this QR code. Feel free to scan right now. I'll wait. Okay, so let's move on. So for this first part of the webinar, we'll focus on small audience communications. So here there are a few key points that we'll cover. Know your audience, the who and the how many, and really how much time do you have. From there, we'll move on to the beauty of simplicity. Simplicity is key. Simple just sticks. Then we'll dive into the one-on-one communications, the 30-second elevator pitch, and then we'll discuss the approach to effective poster presentation. So first, you need to know your audience. To whom and how many are you speaking to? One, a group of students, a group of professors, renowned people in the field, this adorable baby scientist. A general practice I think is safe in formatting your presentation. Speak to a general scientific audience. Assume that they don't know the quirks or the seminal work in your area, which gives you the opportunity to fill in those gaps. Also, how much time do you have? This is crucial in the distillation of the information that you want to convey. Is it a quick introduction in the hallway or the elevator, 5-minute interaction at a poster, or a full lecture? These are some of the key questions that you need to consider and answer in real time in presenting yourself and your work. So this brings us to the primary focus of this talk. If you don't take anything else away from this talk, just take this away. Simplicity is key. Simple just sticks. Next, I'd like to highlight a brilliant quote on this matter from Albert Einstein, really on the distillation of ideas and theory, where he said, "It can scarcely be denied that the supreme goal of all theory is to make the irreducible basic elements as few or as simple and as few as possible without having to surrender the adequate representation of a single datum of experience." A little wordy, but this is an astute point on the refinement of theory. Yet, ironically, I believe that we can confidently paraphrase, simplify even a little further, to everything should be made as simple as possible, but no simpler. So with this in mind, let's move on to the one-on-one presentation. The elevator pitch. So what is the goal of the elevator pitch? The goal is to offer a quick introduction of yourself and explaining what you do and who you are. But also, and very importantly, you need to leave that lasting impression. This is extremely important in networking in general. And while I appreciate Kevin's brevity in this interaction, I think we can workshop that elevator conversation to leave a little better impression rather than him watching 14 hours of television over the weekend. So let's discuss the guts of the elevator pitch. Now, many will shoot for a full minute. I remember in my graduate studies when we were workshopping our elevator pitch, we were focusing on 1 minute. I think that's just too long and unrealistic in the hustle and bustle of a normal scientific conference. I believe 25 to 30 seconds is much more realistic in the brief interactions that you have. And really, it's very simple, down to 5 points. You have the who, the what, the why, the how, and importantly, how cool. So first is who. Who is you, obviously, your name, your job, and where you do it. Pretty boring. The what is the topic of study. This can be centered around a disease, an organ function, a cell function, a particular protein, pharmacotherapy. Really, it's what you study. And then, why do you study it? Why in the heck do you study that? Talk about the impact here. Think about populations or subpopulations that are affected by that disease or your type of study, the costs involved that they're inflicted upon maybe a country, the cure or lack thereof. Think big picture in this point, what your studies really apply to. For example, I focus on hypertension as it affects nearly half of American adults. Or I focus on cardiovascular disease because it's the leading cause of morbidity and mortality worldwide. So next is the how. And this should really be focused on the methodology or modality, techniques that you use. I record kidney nerve activity to study their role in kidney function and blood pressure control. Bring in your model, that primary technique, or that whether it's you or a team that's doing these studies. And then finally, and I would argue most importantly, is how cool. You really got to sell this point. This is especially important as it's likely to leave that lasting impression. So don't be afraid to brag a little bit. It's okay. So focus on novelty, innovation. If you're using really cool new tech, or you have a high level of mastery in this particular technique that's quite rare in your field, or if it's able to change current dogma or clinical practice. Really, this is your closer. So leave a nice and lasting impression with that person. And once you're done, though, don't forget to follow up with a business card or an exchange of information, or where they can catch you next. So whether it's a talk that's coming up at the scientific conference, or if you have a poster session coming up, invite them to that. Keep the conversation going. So next, let's talk a little bit about small audience presentations. So the 1 to 5 scale, where I'd like to really focus on the poster presentations, which is really the most common and important small group presentations for trainees. So what should be your goals in designing and presenting a poster? I would argue that first and foremost, it needs to attract and retain attention. It needs to be pretty. You can't present without an audience. So you need to bring that audience to you. You need to have a clear message and title, easy to read and easy to digest. Do not leave it as a 30, 40 word title. Make it simple as possible, but no simpler. We want you to convey that information cleanly and quickly, because the poster presentation is really a quick interchange of thoughts and ideas. Second, I think it's very important that you recognize that this is a very strong moment to advertise, advertise, advertise. Advertise your group, advertise your PI, advertise the research topic, as well as, and importantly, advertise yourself. Maybe not as much as this gentleman here on the left, where you see he rented out a billboard space. This is in Minneapolis. I remember seeing this, where he was seeking out a new job. But you do want to get your name and face out there. It's great, open up more career opportunities for yourself down the line. And the poster presentation is a perfect opportunity for that. So what goes into creating a poster? You want to maximize and emphasize the critical information. Distill those primary points that you want your audience to take away to easily digestible figures and text. Also, you want to minimize the signal to noise ratio. What I mean by this is don't be afraid of leaving blank space on the poster. I see this all too often where every last inch is filled with small text just squeezed in there, which is just absurd. No one's going to read that, and it's not really that helpful, and it's quite frankly quite ugly. So you need to recognize that this is a temporary medium of communication, and really it should be a delicious, filling appetizer, like loaded nachos, or for you Midwesterners, tachos. Not a 7-course meal. But unlike nachos, this should be clean and organized to allow both the eye and the brain to flow easily and logically. The less text, the better. Now, telling your story is important. How you tell your story is important. When I'm presenting a poster, I like to approach it like Quentin Tarantino did in Pulp Fiction. Really give up the goods from the start, and then backfill in all those details afterward. Really focus on reverse storytelling. You might as well give them the goods right from the get-go. We found that drug X mitigated Y in our disease model of Z. And then backfill all of the information into your studies. Explain the basis of the study and the primary aims and hypothesis. It is crucial that you mention and very clearly point to your hypothesis. And in your hypothesis, give a prediction, whether it be up, down, left, right, more or less. Do not say we expect differences. We expect there to be a change with this treatment. No good. Give a prediction. It's okay to be wrong. But you need to include this in your hypothesis. And also maintain eye contact. Face your audience while you're presenting your poster. It's easy to turn away, just like this, and point to something on your poster while your back is facing your audience. It's not a good practice in presentation, and you need to try to resist this as much as possible. Channel that inner Vanna White and always face the audience when you're presenting, and reveal the new bits of information while you're facing the audience. And also just recognize that this is a perfect chance to deliver and practice your elevator pitch. Furthermore, when progressing through your story, you need to constantly frame and refer back to your original hypothesis, and simply state at the end whether your data was supportive or not supportive. It's okay to be wrong. In fact, I personally love hearing this, especially from trainees, because it reaffirms that we all recognize that we can't be right all the time. But what we can control is whether or not we carry out good science. Now, when you're presenting your poster, be sure to check in with your audience to see if they're following along. You don't want to present your entire story while some of your audience is left back in the method section and not really having an idea what you're talking about in the end. So to avoid this, it's good to check in with the audience, but it's also a good practice to present to a general scientific audience, like I mentioned earlier. Allow your audience members or your poster visitor to request you to skip through the fundamentals. It's okay. I do it all the time for other poster presentations. I'll tell them, okay, I'm aware of this. Oh, but can you explain that again? And then move on. It's okay. It's very conversational. It doesn't have to be just didactic. Now, in an effort to advertise yourself, I would highly recommend using QR codes. These little guys are really easy to connect your audience to you. or to sources that you want to share with them, whether it be a website link or a paper or anything like that. It's very easy to embed this within that code. And I swear that this is not a Rickroll video. I was very tempted, but this is just my information that's embedded in this URL or QR code. So you can find these QR code generators all over the web, where you can fill in the contact information or a website link that will automatically populate within that code, which you can just copy and paste into your poster, which that person can scan with their smartphone, and it'll automatically pop up. It's free, it's easy, and it's effective. I've made this as simple as possible for y'all to use a QR code to a QR code generator search. Easy peasy. Go ahead and scan right now if you'd like. Now, I would be remiss if I did not mention an emerging trend in poster design, started by a graduate student at Michigan State at the time, at least, named Mike Morrison, where he eloquently explains and sells his idea about simplified poster design, which has really come under the hashtag of #BetterPoster, which you can find resources in the tab in this webinar, or you can just scan this QR code, which will bring you to that YouTube video where he eloquently lays out his entire spiel. I'll try to summarize as best as I can. So in this video, he critiques the traditional poster design that we're all very accustomed to. It's very dense in text. You have your abstract, your introduction, all text, by the way. You have your methods, your results, your conclusions, a little bit more of a discussion, maybe a hypothesis figure, all really taking up most of the space on that poster. And really the signal to noise ratio of crucial information that you want to convey to the audience is quite low. So as Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, a successful French author, but miserable and awful French pilot, commented on perfection. Perfection is achieved, not when there is nothing more to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. Really, it's a beautiful final Jenga tower, if you will. So translating this to a poster design, Mike Morrison argues that the primary and crucial information that you want to be conveyed after a person goes through your poster is emphasized right smack dab in the middle of the poster in bold. And importantly, this needs to be conveyed in plain language rather than a technical summary. So you need to be able to convey your knowledge, what you did and what you found, to the general scientific community and not just those ones in your field. So going over the poster anatomy, you see on the left panel, it contains the traditional yet abbreviated information, such as the intro, the methods, the results, the discussion, but really it's condensed and bulleted. This offers a really nice spot for all those interested visitors that see your poster and read that summary to approach and learn a little bit more. And what's nice is it's off to the side and it leaves that person on deck, because you might be wrapping up another poster presentation with another group or another person, so that person can remain on the side as you're wrapping up, and it creates a really nice flow, which I really like that organization of that poster. And here on the right, you can see that this is a space to really offer information that's not entirely crucial to your story, but it's important nonetheless. Think of it as a supplemental data file that you submit with a manuscript. Here put proof of principle concept figures, tables, important experimental controls, technique cartoons or photos. Another really neat idea is to workshop a Q&A with either your group or your peers, where you'll be able to figure out what are common questions that arise, and then you can list and answer those questions right there, so that if you're not present to present that to the passerby, they can have those answered right there. Now, outside of making a poster look really clean and attractive and will most likely bring in a nice audience, it offers visitors a way to easily peruse the poster sections and easily digest the critical information that you want to convey. We've all been there. We've been walking down those poster section aisles, and there's just tons of people and tons of text-ridden posters, and so there's a lot of noise, both visual and audible. So you want to make it as simple as possible so that that passerby can take in all the information that you want to convey to them. And if they're interested, they'll stop. And if they're too busy, but they're interested, hey, there's a QR code right there that could bring them either to an electronic copy that you've made public on maybe a Dropbox folder, or your contact information to request a copy. It makes your information and the research readily available, which is and accessible, which is extremely important in the hustle and bustle of the traditional conference. So here you can see a sample of many folks using the better poster technique, where on the left you see a portrait style simplified poster, really an amalgam of a traditional poster and a better poster technique, where you have an abbreviated intro, methods, results, and discussion. And the most critical information, the results, are maximized, whereas the others are off to the side. In the middle, you see that this gentleman used the blank space in the middle to include a really neat image of the apparatus that he uses in his study. Really cool, really great idea. And there are plenty of other examples under the Better Poster hashtag handle that you should check out. I encourage you all to check out and consider, at least, in designing your next poster. It doesn't have to be the exact template. You can make it your own. But remember, simple is key. So let's wrap up. First, know your audience. The who, how many, really how much time do you have? Simplicity is key. Simple just sticks. In both your oral and visual. In one scenario, shoot for the 30-second elevator pitch instead of the traditional 1 minute. I think that's just more realistic. And provide, again, the who, the what, the why, the how, and most importantly, the how cool to leave a lasting impression. And with poster presentation, keep in mind the goal is to inform and advertise. Less text, the better. And consider employing the better poster practice or a version of your own. So with that, I'll thank you all for your attention. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today, and I'll hand it back to the moderators.
Thank you very much, Chris. That was a very informative presentation, and I think I have to redesign my posters from now on. Very, very, very important information. Wrapping up, we're going to have our second speaker. She is Dr. Kelly Hyndman, an assistant professor from the University of Alabama at Birmingham. And she will discuss the next generation scientists' tips for talking to large audiences.
Thank you, and good day, everyone. I'm really excited to be here and really happy to follow Chris, who gave a really good presentation on talking to small audiences. And so we're going to take a lot of those key concepts and now apply them to large audiences. So I'll talk to you first about scientific reach. Hopefully this is something you've thought about, but if not, hopefully after today you will. We'll talk a little bit about keys to a dynamic presentation. And then in this age of the new age scientist, I think it's important that we embrace social media. And so we'll talk a bit about that. And finally, I'll talk a bit about this new graphic that's coming out called Visual Abstracts and how to produce really eye-catching, nice graphics. So it is the scientific reach, right? This is something that's very important and we should all be thinking about. It's the number of different people exposed to our science in a given period. So you can imagine when you're speaking to a large audience, this is a great opportunity to really expand your reach. So why should we care about this? Well, it's going to increase the number of people who read your publications, and that hopefully will lead to more people citing your publications. It often will lead to invitations to give talks and seminars, to present at conferences. And all of this will lead to more people who know you, so when they're reviewing your future papers and your future grants, they can put a face to the name. Also, it's a great opportunity to build a connection to your local community, or whether that's your science community or your just local community in the area you live. So there is some data on reach, and I think it's kind of interesting. So for early career investigators, so instructors, postdocs, assistants, professors, much like our trainees, we know that reach is usually lower for women than men, and reach is also lower for underrepresented minorities compared to whites. And why that's sort of important is that in this study, they showed that faculty with the highest quartile of reach, so those that had a very far reach, were twice as likely to receive an R01, which this is a big grant that a lot of people are striving for to fund their labs. Moreover, these people are 3 times more likely to be promoted. And that's even true when we control for things like number of publications and academic disciplines, sort of these classical markers that we use for promotion. People who are well known in the scientific community tend to do better. So this is why reach is important. But I want to get to know my audience a bit more, so I have a poll for you guys. And so I want you to tell me, what do you think makes a great presentation? And you heard some things from Chris, so you can type them. But in the question and answer, if you want to give me some ideas of what you think makes a great presentation. Body language, I like it, yes. Having confidence up there, not slugging. The hook, relatability, ability to connect, enthusiasm, clarity. Oh yeah, they're coming clear language, not too much data per slide, accessibility to the research, simple, clear delivery, dynamic. Okay, you guys get it, you get it. You know what are the things that we want in order to have this great presentation. But yet, when we're up there, we're nervous and sometimes we forget about these things. So I have sort of 5 key areas that I think are really important to think about when you're putting together your presentation, right? So just like with a small audience, with a large audience, you need to know to whom you are speaking. You know, what are the career stages you are talking to? Is this a clinical or perhaps a basic science environment? There could be a wide range of backgrounds in your audience. And so it's really important that we try to tailor our talk to address the audience we're speaking. Sometimes even we'll speak to a lay audience. And so being able to talk about what you do in the lab or what you do you know, when you teach a course to your mom and dad or to your friends is also really important. And so you really need to spend some time thinking about who is my audience and how can I articulate what I'd like to say to them. How long do you have to speak? You know, I'm sure you've heard it. Chris said it. I'll say it. It's very important that you know how long you have to speak and that you use your time wisely and that you always allow time for questions and discussion. You know, no one's ever annoyed when a seminar ends a little bit early, but when a seminar runs long, people sure do start getting itchy and wanting to get out of their chairs. And you don't want to leave that negative impression at the end. So it's always nice that you leave time for your audience to engage with you directly. So what is the story you're trying to tell your audience? Keep it simple. Keep it straightforward. Every time I start putting together a talk, I think, what are the key things I want my audience to learn? And a lot of times it's not about the tiny details. It's more about the bigger picture. And so once you know sort of what are the big points I want to make, it's a little easier to structure your talk around that. Finally, what visuals will serve to amplify your story? You know, we have all heard a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that is so true. I think especially now where our lives have become dependent on the digital interface. And so being able to generate really eye-catching, pleasing, simple imagery to help amplify our story is very important. So keys to a dynamic presentation, you guys brought up a lot of them, so we'll just go through them. Convey your excitement. You know, you've spent a lot of time putting together this talk, doing the science, you know, putting together your lecture, whatever your topic may be. And yes, you're nervous, and talking to a large audience can sometimes be very intense, but try to change that nervous energy into an exciting energy about the project. Less is always more, being simple, with, this is just a common theme, whether it's a small or big audience, but break it down into little digestible parts. When you have a bigger talk, it's really nice if you create sections. And so sort of talk about one idea from the beginning to the end and conclude that part. It's a little easier for the audience to follow you when you work in these sort of discrete units over time, rather than trying to wrap it all up at the end. And so I think that's an important point to keep in mind. Avoid clutter. Keep it simple. Especially these days when we're presenting on Zoom or Teams. Some people are looking on their iPhones. Some people are looking on their iPads. That's a pretty small screen to be looking at your imagery. So you don't want a whole bunch of words and tiny figures. Really avoid that clutter so you make it easy on your listener. And that goes to make it readable. And finally, when you can, use visuals. I think sometimes we like words on our slides because it's a bit of a crutch and allows us to remember what we're going to say. But as you practice and go through this, you'll get used to it and it'll be okay. And so practice makes perfect. It's very important. Even today, I practice my talk in front of a few people because they can help you work on your flow, your timing, definitely catch any of those typos that you made. All of these things are really important and really necessary so that you give a dynamic presentation. So now let's talk a bit about using social media. And this is a really great tool for the new age scientist. And it's a really interesting way to increase your scientific reach. So I have a poll. You should be able to click here. I would like to know, what kind of social media platforms do you guys regularly use right now? Okay, so here are the results. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, a little TikTok. So yeah, I think Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are the top three. They're the ones that have been around the longest and the ones that a lot of us use in our daily life. But there's a lot more these days, right? We have LinkedIn, ResearchGate, Pinterest, Snapchat, Google Scholar, even TikTok has some, educational content to it, surprisingly. And so it's up to you to decide how you want to use your social media, but just know this is a growing field and we're going to become more and more digital as time goes on. So again, back to the question and answer, this poll. When you hear social media, what comes to mind? News, advertising, controversy, connections, pseudoscience, fake news, networking, politics, unfiltered thoughts? Yes, yes. Dancing, inappropriate pictures? Yes. So you guys, exactly. I think a lot of times, for the most part, we think of it as a personal thing, and perhaps even at time an inappropriate thing, depending on the content. To me, I have my friends who love to post pictures of their drinks and their food. They love to post pictures of their vacations. It's a great place to get memes. And so that's really, to me, the personal side to social media. But what hopefully, as time goes on, we'll start to understand that there's a very professional side to social media. I mean, it's on you to draw the line between personal and professional. But I want to highlight some of the ways these days that the professional side to social media will really help you expand your scientific reach. So the first example I have is I'm a kidney physiologist, so all of my examples will be kidney related, but I'm sure you can find whatever organ or system you're interested in, animal you're interested in, whatever, has similar content. So the first thing is, these days, there's a lot of live tweeting that goes on at conferences and seminars. And so in real time, even if you're not attending that conference, people will give their opinions or their summaries or conclusions of different people's talks. And so it's a really great way for you to stay up to date on some of the latest science, or even yourself tweet about it, and getting to know the field better. And so Kidney Week just happened a couple of weeks ago, sponsored by the American Society of Nephrology, and they have the hashtag Kidney Week, so you can search there. APS meetings always have hashtags, so same thing. You can follow around in real time or look at it afterwards because it's forever archived. There's also online Twitter journal clubs. And so these are two examples, NephJC, and then Hypertension has the HypeHip. And so these are really interesting opportunities where once or twice a month, you go online and they'll discuss a paper. And a lot of times they try to invite the authors to come too. And so in this way, you can actually have an opportunity to engage and ask questions about the paper. Ask them why they didn't do X, Y, and Z, or ask them what is the next experiment. It's just another way online to engage with the community and have them learn, who you are and what you're interested in, but also you get to learn a little bit more about what other people think of these types of publications. There's also a lot of what they call FOMED, which is free online medical education. Again, depending on your discipline, there's probably lots of resources all over, but you have things called like tweetorials. And so what the authors do is they string along a series of tweets that educate you on a topic. And so this is a perfect example. This is the aldosterone paradox by Dr. Paul Welling, who is an APS member. And he made this tweetorial about the, like I just said, the aldosterone paradox and the potassium switch. And you can see it has over 400 likes. It's been retweeted 217 times. But if you click on this, he does a really nice job of explaining this paradox and what's going on. And so again, there's just another way to interact with these experts in the field and learn from them. So how do you professionally build a network with social media, right? You need to be the master of your online presence, okay? What you do online is controlled by you, right? Doesn't matter what other people say to you, it's how you respond or if you respond or whatever. So, this isn't a new concept, but I'm still surprised sometimes when I meet people and they say they're not getting any job offers and I Google their name and some of the things I find out about them. So just make sure that your online image matches who you are and is somebody that you would want to hire or interact with, right? It's really important to decide on your goals. If you are wanting to build a network and expand your reach about research, that's what you should stick to. And you should decide, I want to network, I want to share resources, I would like to educate the lay audience. You can have more than one goal, but it's very important you stick to it. So for me, you can find me on Twitter, Dr. Keeks, PhD. I only tweet about science. I love sports, I love news, but that is not what I use my Twitter for. It's only for science education and science outreach. And so at times it's hard when you see something you want to tweet about, but again, it's very important that you keep your personal and professional separate. And it's very easy. You can have two accounts. You can do whatever you want, but it's just up to you to make those goals and stick with them. And then finally, just pick a community and start. It's quite simple. I think Twitter is a great place to start. It's easy to follow scientists you admire. Like, retweet, tweet. They're just simple ways that people start to get to know you and get to know your name. And it's interesting. Originally, I thought hashtags were so silly. And a lot of people like to write these long, complicated hashtags that half the time I don't know what they say. That's not effective. But what hashtags do is they're a way of curating your tweets. And so they allow for others to easily search for a subject, allow others to post on the same subject. And then again, it's archived. It can be sorted in real time. And so the example I'll give you is socket to kidney disease. This is a hashtag that was started by Ginny Lin in Chicago, and it's for World Kidney Day, and it's where people post pictures of their socks because we're trying to socket to kidney disease. And so you can go and look up that hashtag and see all the ways she's been spreading information about kidney disease. So I just want to end with a bit about using visuals to tell your story, right? And so there's a lot of visual abstracts these days. And what these are these sort of concise, eye-catching graphics that summarize your story. A lot of journals are requiring them now. So it is a skill that we all need to be thinking about working on. And again, we just want to use simple creative images to represent your findings. So here's one we put together this past summer for an article that was published. And we have, you can get a lot of free images online. There are a lot of subscriptions you can get online. But ultimately what we did is we just downloaded some free images. It's very important you don't steal images from anybody. But download some free images from VectEasy, and then just in PowerPoint, we put together this little schematic. Some journals have a very specific format, so you just make sure you follow that. But again, the idea is that you use these eye-catching little vector graphics to make your point. So why does this matter? Well, it's all about keeping it simple, right? Here is actually a beautiful figure of a collecting duct cell, a principal cell, and this is taken from a publication. And the whole point of this figure here is to show how water is reabsorbed by the collecting duct. In a paper, people have time to read all of these little boxes, follow all these little arrows. You know, you can take the time to digest it. But in a presentation, you don't have the time to do that. So just make sure you simplify it. So here's another image articulating the same thing. And the whole point is that you have these water channels that drive water reabsorption. So just try to keep it simple and keep it eye-catching. And so I just want to bring up another program. It's called BioRender. It's the one that we use in our lab group quite frequently to make schemes, to make visual abstracts like I just showed you. And what's really great is it has over 20,000 scientific related images that can be edited and customized to your needs. There is a free option, which is also great. And then of course, there's a subscription option. But just depending on what your lab needs, there are a lot of free versions of things online that can help you make these dynamic images. So with that, I'm just going to end with remember the 5 points. And, you know, try not to let your nerves take over you. And when you talk to a large audience, think of it as a great opportunity to expand your reach and educate a lot of people at once.
Well, first, I would like to thank for the 2 very outstanding presentations. Thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Chris. Now we have time for questions and answers. And we're gonna try to go through as many as we can. So please free to put any questions you have in the question and answer box. And let's start with something that I think is quite relevant to a current situation, because this question actually popped up a few times already. How do you think these new simple posters fit into our new world of virtual poster sessions instead of in-person conferences? And I think that actually really touches the important question: how do we deal with the presentations, either it's a poster or a talk, in our virtual world?
I'll take a stab at that. So I anticipated this question. I think you should be able to use a similar format. You want to clearly state your primary findings and what you did in layman language, because you will still, at experimental biology this year, it's virtual. You'll be able to peruse posters kind of as you scroll through. So I think that's still going to be effective. But you probably want to make all the information that you want available on your poster. I did speak with Linda Allen, which is the meeting director. And this year, you're going to have a poster presentation virtual, and it's going to be in your own little room, really. And you could and you should provide an audible accompaniment of how to go through your poster, but right now I do not believe it's a visual, as in a video accompaniment during a poster time. So, but I really like it because you're able to ask questions and answer questions in the dialogue that's attached to that poster, and that remains available throughout the whole time. So you can see other questions and answers from previous exchanges, which I think is going to be nice. But yes, I think formatting can be the same as far as the cutter poster design. So I don't know, give it a shot. I think it's a good one.
All right. Now I think maybe a question for Kelly. Let me just touching bases on the social media. So there is a question for Kelly. What do you think about LinkedIn particularly? And I guess the question would be more, to put it more general, what social media particularly you think are the best resources that we can use nowadays?
Well, So I think it's whatever you feel you are comfortable using. Like, for example, if you don't want to make photographs and images, then Instagram's not going to be very good for you. I think the top two popular ones are Facebook and Twitter. And as I said here, I think Twitter's the easiest way to start because it combines both short phrasing and images, whatever you want. And it's also in real time and rapid. And so what I like about it is, for example, if a study comes out, if people are into it, they start talking about it, tweeting it instantly. And so I've found a number of articles that I didn't know had just been released on topics related to my work because of Twitter. And I see in the questions, a lot of times people are asking, how much time do you spend on all this? Again, your job is not to be on social media. So I am not on it as much. I also don't have it give me notifications to my phone because that'd be very distracting. So just when I'm having a cup of coffee or at the end of the day, I'll just take a little look and go through my feed and see if there's any interesting. I also help with the social media in our division. And so, I am a big advocate for live tweeting and letting people know who's visiting, what's the take-home message. And that way you kind of stay up to date with the research trends. But really, it's whatever you're into. And I think as time goes on, there's going to be more and more platforms. And they all have different pros and cons. So it's just up to you and your comfort level. And I say just start and see how it goes. You can always stop and unsubscribe.
Okay, and actually following up on that question, David Pollock asked, he said, nice talk. What about old people that will not learn social media? So would you comment on that? Because Dr. Pollock said they are going to fade away with time, but not anytime soon. Are they just left out?
So Dr. Pollock, I think, asked two questions. One was also about business cards. So I put them sort of in the same category, which is, yes, I mean, a business card is a little archaic, but it does have a place, and there are people who are still comfortable with that. If you're going to use a business card, I carry my business cards, but when I give it to somebody, I always write on the back what we were talking about or something specific so that it does help them remember me. So I do think there's a place for business cards. Chris can comment too if he thinks there is, but I think as time goes on, having paper with us is not what we're going to be doing. We have our phones and our iPads, and that's how we're going to be transmitting information to each other. As for senior people not embracing social media, I think a lot of them are. But if they aren't open to that, that's okay too. I think especially with this pandemic and now everything being on Zoom and digital, more of them have been forced to embrace new technology. So I think we're moving there. I don't know, Chris, what do you think?
So I might be in the minority in my age group, but I try to stay off of social media. I don't have a Facebook. The only thing I have is a LinkedIn and a Twitter, and that is specifically for business purposes. I've kind of stepped away from social media on the personal side. I think it's good for my sanity. So I actually kind of agree with Dr. Pollock in that
So I will agree with you too.
But use it for business purposes, and really it is a tool to be used. So use it as such, but don't abuse it.
Exactly. Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the whole point of deciding what you're going to use it for. If you're getting wrapped up in all this political drama or sports or whatever it may be, then you shouldn't cross your streams. And so I use my personal and private social media accounts are separate. And I stick to my professional being only professional, no matter what other tweets come along my way. Somebody asked if the lack of social media can affect you negatively. I don't know if it affects you negatively per se, but I do think that, again, if you think of expanding your scientific reach, it's just another way for people all around the world to learn your name and to figure out who you are and what you're doing.
All right. Going back to the presentations, there are a few questions about how to present and any advices that you would give to someone who's very stressed and can't even, control the shaking voice, or, have particularly maybe is not so confident with the presentation skills itself. So what kind of advice would you give to students or postdocs with the presentation skills?
So for students, and I would imagine this to be more undergrad and graduate students, I would think that postdocs are more experienced. So I would just recommend that you just practice. Practice alone, but more importantly, recruit people from your lab or your peers and just present to them. And if they're able to understand it and they're not really aware of what your research is prior to that, and you're able to convey your message, at least you have that to carry into the big leagues, where you're going to be conveying your message to leaders in the field. So just practice, and I think that'll really help. Don't drink coffee beforehand. That'll just exacerbate it.
All right. Okay, would you like to add anything?
I don't think I have anything to add.
All right. Okay, going back to the next questions, and maybe that would be a question to Chris particularly. When you market yourself, what are the key things to talk about? For example, should you mention or bring up the current or completed funding? I guess this question really relates to the elevator talk, or the pitch talk.
Yeah, I think that if you're going to bring up funding, I think that is more geared towards PIs. So I would probably talk a little bit more about my funding. But as far as maybe trainees, like graduate students, unless you're directly supported by an AHA pre-doc or postdoc, or the APS, I should say, the pre-doc or postdoc award, I wouldn't really talk about that. But put that information on your poster. I think that's important.
All right. Now, another question is how to handle so many social media platforms and your studies and research all together as they become so crowded.
So, I mean, it's whatever you put out there is going to be out there. So if you're putting yourself on 4 different platforms and it's all the same information, then yeah, I can see how that'd be overwhelming. I really only use Twitter for my social media science outreach, and I find it quite manageable. I will say, I was just typing some answers here. If you find that information is coming at you too quickly, if it's hashtagged, it's very easy to just on your own time search for that hashtag and sort in order. If you're on a journal club, which is live, use a program called TweetDeck. Okay, it actually in real time refreshes everything for you and comes up, and you can just sort of read through. But I was on a journal club once that had over 300 participants. It was for a very important clinical trial that came out last year in the kidney field, and the comments were coming up so quickly it was very hard to follow. But because they're all hashtagged, that's all saved and archived, and I can go back and read it. So I think the keys are to remember our job is not to just, sell ourselves all day long. Our jobs are to be teaching, to be in the lab, to be, whatever our career path is. These are just tools that we should incorporate into our programs to help us expand our reach. If it becomes overwhelming, stop doing it. You're in control. That's the whole great part about it. It's you're in control.
All right, great. The next question is, do you have any suggestions for how to engage the audience where you're not able to be seen?
It's very difficult.
That's a good question. Maybe I think of just a pretty poster, like something that's very appealing will at least garner some attention. Yeah, that's a really important question to address in the virtual setting. I think you just have to make your poster look good. But also, I think bringing in that layman language to summarize exactly what you did and what you found will also help bring attention and maintain attention during your poster.
All right. I guess the question for Kelly, one more question would be, how do you keep the class engaged when students feel everything is available online? So why attend lectures?
Yeah, that is a tough one. And so all you can do is try to be engaging, try to make sure, you know, I'm a big believer in that I should provide all the resources necessary to my students. So I always give them copies of my slides ahead of time. And perhaps in doing that, they don't pay attention when I'm lecturing. But if you try to deliver a dynamic talk and show your enthusiasm and spend the time trying to engage them, to question them, to pull them, you know, Zoom and these platforms do have different techniques where you can write live, draw things live, or, you know, do whatever, pull the audience live. It's important that you keep their attention to you. But again, if we work in small, digestible units, it's also going to help them, you know, follow what you're trying to educate them on. And so I think, again, just, you know, give it your all and put in your energy, and, you know, that's the best you can do. The other thing to keep in mind is, you know, all of us are available offline too. Our engagement doesn't have to only be online and like in this webinar. You can always reach out to people, follow up with questions, whatever. So keep that in mind too moving forward.
All right. Well, we are not able to cover all the questions, unfortunately, due to the lack of time. But I would really like to thank our speakers today for giving this outstanding presentation for us. Would you guys be willing to answer any additional questions if anyone would like to reach out to you for any advices related to presenting? Is it a poster or a big audience presentation, social media, or anything related to today's talks?
Of course.
No.
Okay.
No, that's fine.
Thank you. So, thank you for attending, and I guess I'm gonna see you next week.
All right.
Thank you very much for all of you, and thank you very much for attending the symposium.
Thank you.